I used to believe my life was steady, almost unshakable, like a well-worn path I could walk with my eyes closed. My partner, Daniel, and I had been together for years. Our routines were familiar. Quiet dinners at home, occasional nights out with mutual friends, long weekends spent catching up on chores rather than chasing excitement. I loved him, in the way one loves comfort, the warmth of a blanket, the smell of morning coffee, but deep down I knew that something inside me had gone quiet. Ethan, my oldest friend, was the opposite of quiet. He had always carried an energy that made any room feel brighter. We'd known each other since college, and through the years our bond had only deepened. He was the kind of friend who remembered birthdays without Facebook reminders, who showed up with takeout when he knew I was drowning in work, who listened without judgment when I confessed insecurities I couldn't share with anyone else. His presence had become a constant, woven into the very fabric of my life. It wasn't supposed to be complicated. I had Daniel, and Ethan had always respected that boundary. But lately, things between Daniel and me had grown strained. He was distracted, exhausted from long hours at work, and I felt myself fading into the background of his priorities. Our conversations thinned into logistics, groceries, bills, appointments. Somewhere along the line, the spark that had once defined us dimmed into embers. Ethan seemed to notice before I admitted it to myself. One evening, after a casual dinner at his apartment, he tilted his head and studied me in that unsettlingly perceptive way of his. "You're quieter than usual," he said softly, setting down his glass. "What's going on?" I wanted to brush it off, but the concern in his voice loosened something inside me. Words slipped out, about Daniel's distance, about my frustration, about the emptiness creeping in where passion used to be. Ethan listened the way Daniel hadn't in months, his eyes steady, his silence supportive. When I finished, he reached across the table and touched my hand, just briefly, but enough to send a shiver up my arm. I pulled back instinctively, my chest tight. It was nothing, I told myself, just a friend being kind. Yet the echo of his touch lingered long after. The following week, Ethan suggested we catch a late movie. Daniel had another late night at the office, so I agreed. The film itself faded from memory. What I remembered was the ride home. The city lights blurred through the windshield, and the quiet between us felt charged, like static before a storm. Ethan's hand rested casually on the console, and mine hovered close enough that I was painfully aware of the space between us. "Remember when we used to stay up all night, just talking?" Ethan asked suddenly, his voice low. I smiled faintly. "Yeah, back when we thought we had life figured out." He chuckled, then grew serious. "Sometimes I miss that. Us. How simple it used to be." The word us struck me harder than it should have. My pulse quickened, and I turned toward the window, afraid that my expression might give me away. When he pulled up outside my place, neither of us moved to end the night. We sat in silence, the weight of unspoken words pressing down. Then Ethan turned to me, his eyes darker than I'd ever seen them. For a moment, I thought he might say something dangerous, something that would change everything. Instead, he exhaled sharply and forced a smile. "Good night," he said. His voice sounded strained. I nodded, climbing out of the car with my heart thundering. Inside, Daniel was asleep on the couch, still in his work clothes, the television flickering. I covered him with a blanket, staring down at the man I had promised myself to. Guilt churned inside me, though I had done nothing wrong. Not yet. Still, when I closed my eyes that night, it wasn't Daniel's face I saw. It was Ethan's hand, hovering close, his gaze heavy with something I had no business wanting. And for the first time, I admitted the truth I had been denying for months. I wanted what I could not have. The days that followed felt like walking a tightrope. Every interaction with Ethan carried an undercurrent, a silent acknowledgement of the boundary we had brushed against but not yet crossed. I told myself to pull back to create distance, but instead I found myself gravitating toward him, drawn by a force I didn't fully understand, or maybe didn't want to. Daniel's schedule gave me excuses. He was buried in work, often returning home after midnight. Our conversations had shrunk into passing greetings, the bare, minimum exchange of partners who shared space, but not connection. Loneliness gnawed at me, and Ethan's voice, his presence, became the antidote I craved. One Friday evening, he invited me over under the guise of helping him set up new shelves in his living room. It sounded harmless enough, something we'd done countless times before. Yet, the moment I stepped inside his apartment, I sensed a shift. The air was warmer, the lighting softer, and there was an intimacy to the atmosphere that unsettled me. We worked side by side, laughing over crooked screws and mismatched instructions. But each laugh lingered too long. Each brush of our arms against one another seemed amplified. At one point, while steadying a wooden plank, Ethan's hand covered mine. He didn't pull away immediately. Neither did I. When the shelves finally stood, lopsided but functional, Ethan handed me a beer, and we collapsed onto the couch. Music played faintly in the background, a low hum that filled the silences between us. I tried to focus on anything else, the room, the drink in my hand, the steady rhythm of my breathing, but Ethan's proximity was overwhelming. "You've seemed lighter tonight," he said after a pause. "I like seeing you like this." The sincerity in his tone disarmed me. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "It's because of you. You make it easy." As soon as the words left my mouth, I wished I could take them back. His eyes searched mine, a question unspoken but undeniable. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating, until he leaned in just slightly, close enough that I could feel his breath on my skin. I froze, caught between instinct and desire. Every rational part of me screamed to stop, to protect what I had with Daniel. But in that suspended moment, rationality faltered. My body betrayed me, tilting closer, erasing the sliver of space that remained. The kiss was soft at first, hesitant, as though we were both afraid of the truth it carried. But once the barrier broke, restraint dissolved. His hand slid to the back of my neck, pulling me deeper into him, and my world narrowed to the warmth of his mouth, the pounding of my pulse. When we finally pulled apart, breathless, guilt crashed into me like a tidal wave. I pressed my hands to my face, whispering, "What are we doing?" Ethan's voice was steady, though his eyes betrayed the same turmoil I felt. "Something we've wanted for a long time. Don't deny it." I wanted to deny it. I wanted to rewind, to pretend nothing had happened. Yet the truth pulsed through me. He was right. This wasn't a sudden accident. It had been building for months, maybe years, in glances, touches, and unspoken words. We sat in silence, the weight of what we'd done settling between us. Part of me expected him to apologize, to insist it was a mistake, but he didn't. Instead, he reached for my hand, his thumb tracing slow circles across my skin. The tenderness of the gesture unraveled me more than the kiss had. "I don't want to hurt Daniel," I whispered, almost pleading with myself. "You won't," Ethan replied quietly. "Not if this stays between us." It was a dangerous promise, one I knew better than to believe. But I nodded anyway, clinging to the illusion that secrecy could shield us from consequences. When I finally left that night, the city streets felt different, too bright, too exposed. At home, Daniel was already asleep, his steady breathing filling the darkened room. I slid into bed beside him, heart pounding, skin still tingling with Ethan's touch. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, consumed by the realization that there was no going back. A line had been crossed, and whether I wanted it or not, my life had shifted, and the terrifying truth was that a part of me couldn't wait to cross it again. Morning light has a cruel way of revealing truths the night tries to hide. In the days after that first kiss, I walked through my life with a mask firmly in place, but underneath everything had shifted. Daniel noticed the changes before I was ready to admit them. He wasn't oblivious. He saw the late nights, the distracted silences, the way my phone stayed closer to me than before. "You've been distant," he said one evening, his eyes searching mine. "Is something wrong?" I forced a smile, rehearsed and hollow. "Just work stress. Nothing more." But guilt gnawed at me. Each lie felt heavier, each excuse more fragile. And yet, I couldn't bring myself to stop seeing Ethan. The pull was magnetic, dangerous, and utterly consuming. Every time I told myself it would be the last, I found myself back in his arms, surrendering to the fire I had tried so hard to resist. With Ethan, I felt alive in ways I hadn't in years. He looked at me as though I mattered, as though I was worth desire, worth passion. That intoxicating validation blurred every boundary I once held sacred. But once the haze of stolen moments passed, reality struck harder. Daniel's kindness became unbearable. The way he leaned over to kiss my forehead, the way he absent-mindedly reached for my hand on the couch, it all reminded me of what I was betraying. I would lie awake at night, Ethan's taste still fresh on my lips, while Daniel slept soundly beside me. It felt like living two separate lives, one honest and one shamefully hidden. Ethan, however, began to grow restless with secrecy. One night, as we sat in his apartment with the lights dimmed, he broke the silence. "I don't want to be your shadow," he said, his voice heavy with longing. "I can't just be the secret you come to when the world isn't looking." The words pierced me. "You know, I can't leave Daniel," I replied. He's my life." "Is he?" Ethan asked, not unkindly, but with a clarity that left me breathless. "Or is he just your comfort zone?" His question lingered long after I left, echoing louder with each passing day. Was Daniel still my partner, or just a promise I was too afraid to break? The tension at home only deepened. Daniel's patience wore thin, his questions sharpened. One evening, as I fumbled through yet another excuse, he finally snapped. "Don't lie to me," he said, his voice cracking. "I can feel you slipping away. Tell me the truth. Are you seeing someone else?" The words hung in the air like a verdict. My mouth opened, but nothing came. The silence was louder than any confession. Daniel's expression crumbled, his eyes filling with a hurt I had never seen before. He didn't need my answer. My silence was enough. I left the room, but his face haunted me. The pain in his eyes was seared into my chest, deeper than any passion Ethan could give me. That night I met Ethan, desperate for clarity, for solace. He wrapped me in his arms, whispering that everything would be all right, that we would find a way. But as I held him, I realized the cruel truth. Love born from betrayal could never feel whole. The thrill that once electrified me now felt tainted, every touch shadowed by the damage I'd caused. I wasn't free. I was trapped, caught between two men, two lives, and two versions of myself. When I returned home, Daniel was awake, sitting in the dark. He didn't speak, and I didn't dare to. The silence between us had grown into a wall, and I knew then that something fundamental had broken. I slipped into bed beside him, staring into the void of the ceiling. Ethan's warmth still lingered on my skin, but it felt hollow, unsustainable. Daniel's back was turned to me, rigid, unreachable. And there, in the stillness, the weight of everything I had done pressed down on me with suffocating force. Desire had given me fire, but fire consumes. And as I lay between the man I had betrayed and the man I could never truly have, I understood that some lines, once crossed, can never be uncrossed. The days that followed unfolded in fragments, like a mirror cracked down the center. Each shard reflected a different version of me. The loyal partner Daniel believed I once was, the reckless lover Ethan awakened, and the hollow shell left between them. I drifted through those days in a haze, replaying every choice, every kiss, every silence that had widened into a gulf no apology could bridge. Daniel grew quiet, not with the silence of routine, but with the silence of withdrawal. He no longer asked where I had been. He no longer pressed for explanations. His silence became its own answer. He had stopped believing in mine. The absence of confrontation hurt more than anger ever could, because it meant he no longer expected truth from me. Ethan, on the other hand, demanded more. His messages came often late-night confessions, invitations to escape, promises of something real, if only I would choose him. "You deserve to be happy," he wrote one night. "Don't waste your life pretending." His words were intoxicating, laced with a dangerous hope, but they also terrified me. Because deep down, I knew happiness built on betrayal could never last. One evening, Ethan called, his voice heavy. "I can't do this anymore," he admitted. "I can't keep being the secret." The words sent a sharp ache through me. Please don't say that. I need you. No, he said firmly. You don't need me. You need to decide who you are. And until you do, I can't keep living in the shadows of your guilt. The line went dead, and with it, the illusion of control I had been clinging to. I returned home that night to find Daniel waiting in the kitchen, a single glass of untouched wine on the counter. He didn't look at me when he spoke. I know, he said quietly. I don't need the details. I know. The words landed like a blade. My throat tightened, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. Daniel, He raised a hand, silencing me. Don't. Whatever you say, it won't erase what's already happened. The finality in his tone crushed me. He didn't shout, didn't demand explanations. His calmness was worse than rage. It was resignation. He had already begun letting go. That night, I lay in bed beside him, listening to the distance in his breathing, and realized the cruel truth. I had lost him long before I touched Ethan. The betrayal was not just the kiss or the night spent in another man's arms. It was the quiet ways I had stopped choosing him, piece by piece, until someone else filled the space I had left behind. Ethan's absence pressed on me like a phantom limb, and Daniel's presence felt like a wound I couldn't tend. I was suspended between what I had destroyed and what I had failed to hold on to. Weeks slipped by. The calls from Ethan stopped. The conversations with Daniel dwindled into polite exchanges, like strangers sharing a roof out of habit rather than love. The house grew colder, the walls echoing with everything unsaid. One evening, while standing at the window, watching the city lights flicker, I understood the cost of desire. Forbidden or not, it had burned through the fragile life I had built, leaving nothing but ashes to sift through. I had wanted passion. I had wanted to feel alive again. But passion without honesty becomes poison, and fire without boundaries devours. As I turned from the window, I saw Daniel's figure retreating down the hallway, his shoulders heavy with a weight I had put there. I didn't follow. I couldn't. Some distances cannot be closed. And in that moment, I realized that the story I had been writing between Daniel, Ethan, and myself was no longer about love. It was about loss. About the ways desire can tempt, consume, and ultimately leave you standing alone, with nothing but the memory of what you once held and the echo of what you let slip away.